My name is Wyatt Thompson, and I'm working with Dr. Lisa Baxter and the Georgia Forages team to answer some of the most common questions and concerns related to boom sprayer calibration. Boom sprayer calibration can be intimidating for a lot of producers and county extension agents. It can be easy to skip a step in the process or not understand how to troubleshoot common issues. In this video, we will walk through this process step by step. Many producers may not realize why boom sprayers are often preferred over other types of spraying tools. Boom sprayers can be used for many different jobs, such as spraying liquid nitrogen and applying pesticides. The design of the boom provides for better coverage and minimizes excessive overlap. Booms are positioned lower to the ground than boomless nozzles, so they are less affected by the wind. This minimizes the impact of the wind on the spray pattern and reduces the likelihood of chemical drift. One of the most common challenges with operating a boom sprayer is completing an accurate calibration. Calibrating a boom sprayer is important to make sure you are not over-applying or under-applying the chemical or fertilizer you are spraying. Over-applying these products can damage your forage and isn't cost-effective. Under-applying could lead to unwanted weeds and insect damage. Now, let's calibrate a boom sprayer. The materials we need for calibration include a walking wheel, or at least 200 feet of tape measure, a couple of flags to mark the start and end of our calibration distance, a tape measure to measure the nozzle spacing, a phone or stopwatch to measure in seconds how long it takes you to travel the calibration distance, and a measuring cup to measure in ounces how much output the nozzles are spraying. In this video, we will be using the ounce calibration method. Written instructions on this method may be found on the UGA Extension website. The link is in the description below. First, determine the method you are going to use. In this video, we will be using the broadcast method. This is the most common method for pastures and hayfields. Next, we need to determine the appropriate calibration distance. Use a small tape measure and measure the spacing between your nozzles. Line up with the center point of each nozzle for an accurate measurement. Then, look up that distance in the chart here to determine your calibration distance. For example, if your nozzle spacing is 20 inches, your calibration distance would be 204 feet. The next step is to measure and mark the calibration distance. Use a flag to mark where you are starting your calibration. Then, using a walking wheel or measuring tape to measure the distance you got from the chart. After reaching the correct distance, place another flag on the end. After that, we need to determine the time it takes to drive the calibration distance. Before we start driving, connect all the attachments you're going to have on while you're spraying. It is also important to drive the entire calibration distance at the speed you want to travel in the field. We often calibrate on farm roads or near a farm shop where travel speeds can be much greater than on a rough field. Make sure you drive the same speed the entire way through the calibration distance. You will need to start moving before the first flag to make sure you get up to your desired speed. You can choose what point of the tractor you want to start timing when you pass the flag, but be consistent for when you stop the timer on the other end. For example, if I start the timer when my front tires go past the first flag, I must stop it when the front tires pass the second flag. Write down the time it took you, the set engine RPMs, and the gear you were driving in. The typical recommended RPM for most implements is no more than 540 RPM. Bring the tractor back to the starting point. With the parking brake engaged, turn on the PTO and set your RPMs to what you had while you were driving the calibration distance. The PTO must be running at the same speed you had when you were driving the calibration distance. Turn on the boom sprayer and gather your collection containers or measuring cup. Hold the measuring cup under one nozzle for the time it took you to travel the calibration distance. For example, if it took you 27 seconds to travel the calibration distance, you need to hold the measuring cup under the nozzle for 27 seconds. Since we are using the ounce calibration method, the number of ounces that are filled in the measuring cup equals the number of gallons per acre rate. For example, if the measuring cup is filled to 13 ounces, then you are spraying at 13 gallons per acre. Repeat this test for multiple nozzles across the width of the boom. If the sprayer output is more or less than the desired rate, you'll need to adjust your speed, pressure, or nozzle size to alter this value. Most pesticides are applied to forages at 10 to 20 gallons per acre. Liquid nitrogen is applied at a much greater rate depending on the desired fertility rate. If you make any adjustment to your ground speed, you'll need to update the time required to drive the calibration distance. If you change your nozzle size or boom sprayer pressure, you need to recollect the liquid from the nozzles for the original calibration time. One of the most challenging parts of the calibration process is at the end when you need to determine the amount of chemical to add into your tank. Now that we know our boom sprayer output in gallons per acre, the calculations are simple. Check the side of your spray tank for the capacity in gallons. This sprayer in the video is 200 gallons. Divide the tank capacity by the sprayer output at the gallons per acre rate to get the number of acres. If our sprayer capacity is 200 gallons and our output is 13 gallons per acre, then our tank can cover 15 acres. Next, multiply this number of acres by the chemical's application rate to get the amount of chemical you need to add to your tank. For example, according to this label, the chemical should be applied at no more than 4 ounces per acre. When we multiply the number of acres that our tank can cover by the application rate per acre, we know how much chemical to put into our tank. If our tank in this example can cover 15 acres and the application rate is 4 ounces per acre, we need to put 60 ounces of chemical into the tank. Now you should be ready to go operate your boom sprayer in the field. There are some common issues that you may encounter. Let's walk through some of these together that you can easily fix. If you find your sprayer isn't covering the number of acres you had originally calculated, the actual spray volume is too high and you are over applying the chemical. It is likely you are traveling at a different ground speed than during the calibration. Two common causes of this are the tractor was not started before the first flag during calibration, or the speed you are operating in the field is lower than what was anticipated during the calibration. To fix this problem, Go back to the earlier instructions and determine the time required to cover the calibration distance using a new ground speed. If you notice the output coming from the different nozzles varies by more than an ounce, check your nozzle and nozzle tips on your sprayer to be sure all tips are the same age and type. Nozzles can wear down or become clogged over time and should be replaced. Nozzle tips should be consistent across the entire width of the boom. You can see here how different the openings of the tips are. If we run the boom sprayer for 30 seconds with these 4 different tips, you can see how variable the collected liquid is. You may notice leaking on the boom sprayer, especially where the tubing connects and under the sprayer. This may appear as dripping, or you may notice irregular spray patterns if the sprayer pressure is not consistent. Check the O-rings and other seals to make sure they aren't cracked or not seated correctly. Visually inspect and tighten all fittings and replace them when needed. Finally, you may see that your boom sprayer is clogging at one or more nozzles. This is common when liquid nitrogen is applied or you have hard water because of debris that can exist in the liquid. Check the filters on your sprayer and make sure they don't need to be cleaned or replaced. We recommend that you clean the nozzles out thoroughly after each use to prevent future clogs. While boom sprayer calibration can be time consuming, it is worth it in the end. To show the economic importance of calibrating your boom sprayer, here's a common example using a pyrethroid insecticide to treat for the Bermuda grass stem maggot. In this example, we will use Mustang Max, but similar results can be found with other pyrethroid products. Mustang Max averages $200 per gallon, or $1.56 per ounce. The application rate is 4 ounces per acre. The Bermuda grass stem maggot needs to be treated twice per harvest period, so 2 applications are required. If we assume $1.56 per ounce multiplied by 4 ounces and 2 applications, the total cost of the insecticide is $12.48 per acre. We also need to add an application rate to account for the equipment and labor. If we assume $10 per acre and multiply this by 2 applications, this equals $20 per acre. When we add the chemical cost to the application cost, that brings our total to $32.48 an acre. If we didn't calibrate and the rate increased by 5% because of over-application or overlap of product, the cost per acre would go up to $33.10. If we increased the rate by 10%, the cost per acre would go up to $33.73, and at 15% would go up to $34.35. It doesn't seem like much, but what if you were spraying a 25-acre field or a 100-acre field? It goes from overpaying just a couple of bucks to overpaying hundreds of dollars. A GPS guidance system would further help ensure that you accurately apply the chemical to the field. But that's a topic for another video. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope this answered your questions on how to calibrate a boom sprayer. If you need more information, please contact your local county extension office. If you need help finding your nearest agent in Georgia, please call 1-800-ASK-UGA-1.